Hello and welcome to Lois and Morgana Davidson Art. It's Morgana here with quick tip number 9 in the quick watercolor tips playlist. Today we are stretching watercolor paper. But first, a quick reminder that Lois's fabulous new book of watercolor tutorials, Landscapes in Watercolor, Techniques and Tutorials for the Complete Beginner, is available to purchase now from all good booksellers. Now, back to the video. So I want to begin today by saying that if you were to Google how to stretch watercolor paper, you would probably find a dozen different methods online with lots of different advice and instruction, a lot of which seem to involve submersing your paper fully in a sink or in the bath. Now, I don't have the space for that sort of thing, so I'm sharing here a relatively quick and simple method that worked for me with my quite limited space and relatively limited art setup. Firstly, we need a nice clean surface to work on, and instead of masking tape, today we're going to be using some of this brown gummed tape, which I've pre-cut into the right lengths for this size of paper. I'm also going to be using the soft side of a clean kitchen sponge to completely saturate my side of the paper with clean water. You can use a brush like so if you'd rather, or a clean cloth or an art sponge, whatever works best for you, as long as it is clean and it is soft enough to use without damaging the sizing on the paper. This piece here that I'm beginning to work on is from Saunders Waterford. It's a sheet of hot press paper, 140 pounds, and this size is a quarter of an imperial sheet, so it's 28 centimeters by 38. As you can see, I'm making sure that the paper is fully saturated. This is actually the reverse side, so this is the back of the paper. Start with the back, work quickly to cover the whole side of the paper with clean water, and then you want to lift carefully and place your paper wet side down onto your painting board. Make sure it is positioned for where you want to actually tape it up, and then using clean water again, you want to next begin wetting the other side. You can see that the paper is already beginning to buckle under the addition of the water. So now it's time to work quickly but carefully. I used a clean paper towel to wipe away some of the water along one edge of the paper. This is going to help the tape to stick. Next, I wet the gummed side of the brown tape with a little more water. This tape can be a little awkward to use if you aren't used to it. It isn't tacky or sticky until you actually add water, much like the gum or glue that you get on the edge of an envelope. Once the tape is wet, I placed it carefully along the edge of the paper. You do get a very small window in which to adjust, but this tape does adhere very quickly. I smoothed it down with my fingers just to make sure it all stuck properly. And once that's ready and done, it is time to repeat this process for all the other sides of the paper. I checked to see that all the pieces of my tape had fully adhered to both the board and to the paper before putting this piece aside to dry flat. It is important that when stretching watercolour paper that you leave the board to dry flat rather than at an angle, otherwise the water can pool along one side and cause the tape to become unstuck. So whilst that one's drying, I decided to try something else to share with you all for this video. This is a painting that I did on a watercolour block which went wrong, so instead of just throwing it away, I've decided to repurpose the back of the paper by seeing if I can stretch it on a board in the same way. The only difference here is that I will be adding water to only one side of the paper, this clean side, as I don't want to dislodge the paint that's already on the back. I'm following pretty much the same process as before, adding the tape piece by piece to the fully saturated piece of paper. It's worth noting that I did both these sheets of paper on different days, but if you're going to be stretching several pieces of paper at the same time, sort of in the same session so to speak, then it is wise to have 2 pots of clean water, one to use for the wet sponge and for wetting the paper itself, and the other to keep aside for wetting the gum tape, just to make sure that you avoid accidentally transferring any of the gum or glue from the tape onto your watercolour paper, which of course we don't want. So let's take a look at the finished results. This is the first piece of paper that I filmed for this quick demo. I'm filming this a couple of days later just to give the paper enough time to dry naturally, and you can see here that it has flattened down completely, really beautiful, really smooth. It's absolutely tight as a drum and ready to paint on. This is my £140 Saunders Waterford hot press. You can see I've labelled it quickly in pencil there, which is another sort of pro tip if you're stretching quite a few different pieces and brands of paper at once. This I wanted to show you as well is another piece of pre-stretched paper. This is Saunders Waterford £90 hot press, which will buckle like mad if you try and paint a big sort of wet in wet wash on it. But as you can see, this stretched piece has dried really beautifully flat. It's ready to paint on, and actually looks really great. And I wanted to show you as well quickly, here is another piece of £90 paper that was pre-stretched that I'm actually working on at the moment. This is an unfinished landscape painting that I did, which you can probably tell used a lot of wet in wet painting, and as I hope you can see, this is still looking really flat and gorgeous as well, and was actually a joy to work on. And this is the last piece that I have to show you. This was the paper that already has a failed painting on one side that I stretched as a second part to this demo. and I hope that you can see as well that this paper is still absolutely flat, despite me only wetting it on one side before stretching, and of course despite me actually painting a painting on it, which is a really good thing to know actually, as this is a great way to repurpose any old paintings that you've since fallen out of love with, or failed paintings such as this, especially as good quality watercolour paper can be so expensive to buy. It's nice to be able to use the back as well. The brown gum tape has done its work and is holding everything really tightly onto the board. It is worth noting very quickly that this tape, unlike masking tape, will not peel away cleanly from the paper once you've finished painting, so you will need to either cut the painting away from the tape using a craft knife, or put the finished painting in a mount or a frame that will conceal the small amount of brown tape along the edges. So I hope you found this quick tips video helpful. Of course, this isn't to say that you now have to stretch all your watercolour paper every single time before painting on it. Just for what it's worth, I think it's a really handy technique to know, to sort of have in your pocket, so to speak, if you find that you've got a certain type of paper that's buckling a lot, to the extent that it's having a negative impact on the scene that you're trying to paint. Or, as I previously mentioned, a good way to get some good use out of the back of an old painting. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful week everybody, and very happy painting.